What violence has to do with fear? When two people relate to each other authentically and humanly, God is the electricity that surges between them. Martin Buber. Most of us understand how fear results from violence. Understanding how violence might result from fear is a little more complicated, at least for me. In our culture, we act as if punishment or fear of it will prevent violence. With an increase of crime, stiffer penalties are passed into law. Vengeance might make us feel better temporarily, but getting tougher on crime does not seem to have much effect. Please spend a few minutes with me reflecting on these connections. At first blush, violence appears random and senseless. Why do some people lash out at others? What do they have to gain? We would never do such a thing. Or would we? Have you ever slapped or spanked your child in anger? Many parents who do will quickly regret what they did and wonder what would possess them to hurt their child. Perhaps you fear that your child could be harmed, that your child will embarrass you, or that your child is growing beyond your control. Maybe it would be easier to understand how fear leads to anger and then violence. Fear that our lives are not progressing may result in frustration and anger. Anger is a perfectly normal emotion, but some of us were raised to think it was not okay to be angry, and so we try to hold it in. Stuffing down anger builds up our frustration until it explodes in rage and perhaps violence. There are healthy and appropriate ways of expressing anger without exploding, but they take thought and practice. What might a criminal fear? How about not being taken seriously, feeling powerless, or being taken advantage, to name a few? Combined with few ways to appropriately meet life's challenges and poor problem-solving skills, it would not take much to feel overwhelmed. With no rational alternatives at hand, their anger builds, and they turn to violent alternatives as the only way to feel powerful and in control of their lives. What might a people with mental illness fear? Their mental illness might distort what they experience to the point that they feel attacked by others' behavior, which they do not understand. Their violent response might be their best effort to protect themselves from what they perceive as attacks. The rest of us might be provoked enough to consider violence if we are angry enough. In a later moment of clarity, we might well be able to trace our impulse back to fear, perhaps of being harmed, of losing something or someone we treasure, or perhaps being severely humiliated. Yet we usually regain control of ourselves and weigh the consequences of following through with our impulses. What if we as a society can find a way to help others with their impulses rather than condemning and punishing them? Life Lab lessons. Do you sometimes have violent urges? Do you know where they come from? Do you have a good way to handle them? If so, share what you have learned with others. If not, consider how you might get to know yourself better.